Matt Mitrogrosso here, creator of Xenoplicity and the queue system that it runs on. Today's video, let's talk about player agency. Because guys, I gotta tell you, there's just a ton of bad advice out there on YouTube, a lot of talking heads out there, a lot of channels that claim to give, great advice for the hobby, and they don't. They give terrible advice, and you need to be very cautious about who you're taking advice from. Now, let's talk about player agency, because again, a lot of people on YouTube talk about this, and they just give terrible advice. There's this channel on YouTube called Rollin Bones, and I stumbled across it, and I was interested in kind of seeing what they had to say. Again, talking heads on YouTube. I was listening to one of the guest speakers they had on that was giving advice about how to run a game. And the idea was that when you're dealing with new players, how to introduce them to a tabletop role-playing game. And one of the examples that was given was that, well, yeah, you just tell the players, this is the town you're in. You cannot leave the town. You have to do something in the town. Whatever you do, I'm not letting you leave this town. That's terrible advice. That's stupid advice. That's actually you being a terrible game master, right? It's not wrong for a game master to have rails, but you don't come out and dictate it like a little petty tyrant saying, well, this is where you're at. You're going to stay here and you're not going to go anywhere and I'm not going to let you do it. Like, if I'm playing at that table and a game master talks to me that way, I'm going to say, all right, I'm leaving town. And the moment the guy says you can't do it, I'm just going to get up from the table and go, screw you. Screw you. I've got better things to do with my Friday night. I'm not going to sit around and be treated like that by someone that just has an ego trip, because that's all that is. That's arrogance. That's an ego trip. That's just someone that wants to be a game master because that's their way of having like a little bully pulpit. Okay. Forget all that nonsense. Don't play with people like that. As the game master, you narrate the world, the setting. You also narrate the NPCs. That's all you do. As a player, you narrate that character. If you want to leave town, you leave town. That's the essence of the game. Let me give you the right advice in that situation. You sit your players down for the first time and you explain to them, this is a living, breathing world. Wherever you go, you're going to interact with nature or with characters in the setting. This is a fictional game. It's a fictional game of play pretend, of imagination. It's a whole world for you to explore. You can go anywhere, you can do anything, and we're going to see what happens from that, okay? Cause and effect. And so there can be bad things happen depending on what you do. You go in and murder somebody, well, you're going to get arrested, or you're going to become a wanted person. You want to leave this town? Great. Well, the wilderness is out there and it's dangerous and it may not go your way. You make sure that you have proper provisions first. You need to make sure that you've got proper equipment if you want to go out into the wild. You want to leave the town. This is core to understanding how the game is to be played. You do not rob players of their agency at the table. You do not, I repeat, you do not tell them that they can't play their character the way they want to play their character. Now, if they're being disruptive, if they're acting out of character, if there's a lot of habits and bad form that a player can do at a game. I'm not saying you can't have a conversation with that player and work that out through communication. On the contrary, you should, okay? Because this is a social game. So at the end of the day, most problems are resolved through communication. But on that same note, you got to communicate in better terms. You don't say, you just can't leave the town. You don't do that. You say, all right, you're new to this. Make sure before you go out into the wilderness where there are things beyond what you're capable of handling, make sure you've got proper equipment. Make sure you've maybe got some followers and some, an entourage to go with you, or maybe sure your group is big enough to survive in whatever's out there, okay? There's, if you're playing in a fantasy land kind of game, like a D&D style game, then the short answer is, dude, there's dragons out there. There are monsters. You better make sure you're prepared. And you don't even have to say that across the table. You can have NPCs in the game world tell this to the player characters. That's the best way to do it, because you can relay information through role play without doing some kind of lore dump or without trying to do some kind of disclaimer at your table that really should happen in the game world, because you don't want the player to know that. You want the character to know that. And the player who's playing that character will then internalize that data. Okay, so if I was in a situation like this and someone were to pose the same question to me, like how do you handle new players at your table, I would be very clear with them. I'll say, cool. So you're in this town. That's where we're picking up, tavern, whatever. And I would have an NPC through either rumors or through just gossip or through conversation. Maybe someone they meet, maybe someone at the tavern, maybe someone selling them something like a merchant, whatever. It doesn't matter. Tell them stories if they ask, if they inquire, like, cool, what's out there? What's past that forest that you see out there? Have them, hear stories about a dragon that lives in the woods or about a monster that roams the land at night. Make it clear that the setting has dangers in it, things they need to be prepared for before they deal with these things. And then if the players decide to still, having heard that, they want to go out into the wilderness and just explore, cool, let them do that. That's exactly why you have random encounter rolls. That's exactly why you have a living, breathing world set up for them to explore. You don't have to have the whole world mapped out. On the contrary, you just need a local area where the game's going to take place. I'm not saying that it has to be a full sandbox where you give them no direction at all. But at the end of the day, like, it's not enough to just have a town prepared. You do need to understand and know what's around that town, because how else would you even narrate what the town looks like, right? Where's the town out? Is it in the mountains? Is it in some plains? Is it on a river? Is it next to the ocean? Like, what town are we even in? And so just by narrating the town, that also encompasses the surrounding area, the surrounding land. So it should not be a ridiculous idea that you should be able to, on the fly, come up with anything that they're going to kind of wander around and encounter in that general vicinity that you've presented, okay? Town or the surrounding lands outside. How far do you think they're going to get in the wilderness? Not terribly far, not on the first session, right? And so you have random encounters for this. Yeah, maybe the whole group of new players make a bad decision, and without proper equipment, without proper training, without proper experience to kind of make them feel confident about it, maybe they decide to just walk right out of that town, and just maybe a couple hours outside of town, a dragon flies over top of them, breathes down fire on them, and then proceeds to eat them. Okay, let me tell you something. That is a great learning experience at your table. That has taught the players several things. Number one, they can go anywhere, they can do anything. They get to really control and play these fictional characters in this fictional world. And that's cool, right? We all love that. That's part of the experience of this game that makes it unique from every other game out there, because every video game has invisible walls. A tabletop role-playing game does not. Right? It shouldn't. People, they build these barriers and walls inside their minds and what they will allow at their table, and they've missed the entire point, okay? This is collaborative storytelling. It's emergent storytelling. That means you don't know how it's going to go, and you're comfortable letting it go in whatever direction it ends up going in. Another thing that you have taught those players by having this encounter that led to a total party kill is that life is cheap. Death is quick. It can happen just like in the real world. And again, if a player understands that, they learn that lesson, they learn it quick, then when character death happens in future sessions, they don't get upset about it, because the expectation has been set at the beginning that, yeah, your characters can absolutely die. You know what expectation you're setting at your table if you tell them you cannot leave the town, you must stay in the town because the world's dangerous and we're not going to let anyone die in the first session. What you've done is you've created plot armor. Okay, you have told them that death should not be expected. You have told them that life is not cheap and that they should be able to count on these characters surviving. And if something is going to pose a real danger, that you're going to give them a warning about it in advance. That is a terrible expectation to set at your table. As a matter of fact, you have just created a bad habit in the new player that was a virgin before this. They had no gaming experience. They were a gaming virgin before this, and now you have built the very first habit that they're ever going to have in the hobby, and it's a bad one. It's a bad expectation, because then several sessions later, if you don't give them that warning, if you don't give them that same plot armor and they happen to die, well, guess what? Now they're upset about it. Now they're upset at you. Why? Why are they upset at you? Because you were not consistent as a game master, right? That's your fault, okay? Be consistent with the way you run your game. Don't have certain rules for the first session and then the rest of the game is going to play a different way. Don't have a tutorial game session. Don't have a dream sequence game session. Forget all that nonsense. They're playing the game, they make a bad decision, they suffer the consequences for it, they learn from that, and then they don't make that same mistake with the next character, okay? Maybe their next characters decide, you know what, we're not going to go out in that wilderness until we have advanced ourselves a bit, until we're confident with our skills, until we've got some better equipment, until maybe we've got a bigger entourage where that dragon wouldn't think to mess with us, that we're more trouble than we're worth, right? There are lots of ways that the in-game world logic can actually dictate good behavior at your table. But when you try to protect these characters from experience what the living world should be, what you've done is you've stripped that away. So now there's no negative consequences for just being reckless and irresponsible with your character. If a player knows that their character is not going to die or that death is extremely unlikely, they're going to play that character more reckless and less believable, less immersive than if they thought, yes, every sword fight is a chance that I could die. If I draw my sword, there's a chance that I'm meeting death, okay? So guess what? You don't necessarily always want to draw your sword if you know that, right? But if you think you're larger than life and you think that, you know, nothing's going to happen to me, well, why not? Why not just try to attack and kill everyone you come across? See, do you see the bad mentality that you develop in players when you teach them wrong from the beginning? So don't do this. Don't strip away player agency. Instead, give them ample amounts of it. Let them have the freedom to explore these things, and they will learn through trial and error, through experience playing the game, how to handle themselves. Another bad expectation that this sets at your table is the idea that the player needs to ask permission before they can do something with their character. This is not true. And you don't want players that get trained to have this habit. And that's what you do. That's what you do when you create this weird rule where they can only go where you tell them they can go, where they can only do things and interact with things that you tell them they're allowed to do and interact with. If they wanted to go into the tavern and drink until they pass out, that's what they should be able to do. And if they want to go be with a prostitute, let them do that too. And if they want to murder somebody that's coming out of the tavern so they can steal their coin purse, you let them do that too. And if they want to go out into the wilderness and get killed by bandits or by a monster that's lurking out there and they go out unprepared, you let them do that too. You do not tell the players where they can go or what they can do. It's a terrible expectation to set at your table. It creates this bad habit where I've had games, guys, where I've game mastered for a group where this is what they were used to. And so you narrate the room, you narrate what they see when they come into the room, and then you shut up and you let them take over, and then no one does. Everyone just sits there. They just sit there like statues, cold, silent, and it's like, what are you doing, guys? Like, come on, interact with the setting. Like, what are your characters doing? I have to say that because they're just clamming up. No one's saying anything at the table. I shouldn't even have to say that. I shouldn't have to say, what are your characters doing? Although sometimes you have to prompt a player if they have this bad habit. The players should just be like, I mean, when the game master shuts up, when they stop talking, the player should just immediately go into action. Okay, this is what I'm doing. And then they jump right into it, right? And if everyone at the table is doing that, there's plenty there to feed off of, where me as the game master, I can sit back, I can listen to all this, and I can answer questions that maybe that their characters would have, like, you know, as far as like stuff in the room, if there's a bookshelf in the room and one of the players is like, I look on the bookshelf, what's there? Well, then I would answer that like, oh, there's, 20 books on the bookshelf, various assorted books. Different sizes and shapes, whatever. They look old, or they look new, or maybe one of them looks new, the rest of them look old, whatever. You answer questions based on what's being interacted with. Another player, goes up, has their character go up to the fireplace and says, is there wood in the fireplace? And then, yeah, there's ashes, there's some little pieces of wood, right? Now, there are some times where maybe a player might even just actually narrate a little bit of this themselves, and where they might go, well, I go up to the fireplace and I start like poking around at the ashes, but I didn't say that there were ashes there. In this case, it's up to me, the game master, whether I want to correct that and go, actually, there's no ashes there, which I might do if it's a fake fireplace. Maybe it's a secret passage that actually goes somewhere else in the mansion, and it actually is not designed to have a fire ever in it. If that's the case, then I have to specify that. Well, actually, there's no ashes in that fireplace. And then, oh, okay. But if I haven't said whether there's ashes or not in the fireplace, and it's a real fireplace that's functional and usable, and the player goes up and says, well, I poke at the ashes in the fireplace. This is like a Schrodinger's cat kind of situation. If that's the case, then just let there be ashes in the fireplace. There's no reason to correct the player and try to overwrite that little bit of narration that they added to the scene. Whatever, who cares? Let them add little bits of narration to the scene. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that at all. Let them have that. That's cool. Because again, you as the game master, you don't think of everything. And maybe there's little attention to detail that you forgot to mention, but players can add as they go around the table and as things are being, again, collaborative storytelling. Everyone's feeding off of each other. That's the way it's supposed to work. But when you say something like, you can't leave the mansion, you have to stay in the mansion, you can't go outside, can't go through the windows, can't go in the cellar, you can't go in the attic, you have to stay on the first, second, or third floor of the mansion. That's where you're at. Well, you've broke all immersion, because that's not there's nothing about that that's going to pull me into the fiction of the game world. Okay, because there's like a force field around it. Like, why can't I go in the attic? Just because you say so? Just because you said I can't? There's nothing in the game world that would make that so. And so really, you've created these weird abstract barriers that only exist because the game master lacked the imagination and the confidence to let go a little and just let things play out however they're going to play out. Maybe there's a ravenous monster in that cellar, and maybe if the player characters go down there, there's no way they can beat it, and they will absolutely be killed because they don't have the magic dagger you need to kill that monster. And to do that, they're going to have to read the diary that's on the third floor in the desk. That's going to take them to a treasure chest that's buried out by the oak tree in the backyard. Okay, and that's where they get the dagger to kill the monster, right? But I'm not going to say you can't go in the cellar. That's not unlocked yet. Again, you're thinking like a video game at this point. Like, don't have these invisible barriers that prevent them from going in deeper than what they should be able to. So yeah, player characters, they go down to that cellar. One of them gets ripped apart and killed while the others escape and run upstairs and slam the door and barricade it shut. Okay, guys, there's a monster down there and nothing we did was able to kill it. We need to figure out a way to kill this monster. You've now motivated the rest of the player characters with what they need to do. They've discovered a goal in the game by being immersed in the setting. That's the best way to do this, okay? Again, there's a right way to do this and a wrong way to do this, and too many people online give bad advice where they're teaching people the wrong way to play these games. Player agency is very important. Do not dictate the way a player can control their character. It is not your place. It is not your place. You do not have the right to tell a player, your character cannot do this. Your character cannot go here. Your character has to do this. I mean, just imagine, and this happens, guys. This happens at so many tables where you'll have a game master that will narrate the players and everything that they're doing. Let's go through an example of how you can really screw up the way the whole game is supposed to operate. Okay, let's say that a player character kills a big bad guy in your game. This is like a powerful magic user. He's got this crazy, wicked, powerful magical amulet on his chest. And so the player decides to have his character He's going to have his character go up and search the body. He really wants that amulet, okay? And then the game master takes over and goes, yes, as you approach the corpse and you see this wizard that's fallen before you, and he's got this magic amulet that's on his chest, and it's kind of glowing. And so you reach down and you pick it up and you look at it and you see that there's strange glyphs and writings, and you realize that it is infernal, and it's wicked and evil, and it will corrupt your soul. So you throw it down and you decide to leave it there. You don't want to get any closer to it. And the whole time that this game master is just narrating and narrating, the player is left going, wait a minute, excuse me, maybe raising their hand like, that's my character, right? Okay, cool. My character doesn't do any of those things because I didn't say any of that. I said I wanted to go up and I wanted to take the amulet. Why can't I just go up and take the amulet? And then the game master responds, well, no, you don't want to take this amulet. It's evil. It's wicked. It'll curse you, and you'll be cursed if you pick it up. It's not your place to tell that player what his character can and can't do. It's not your place to narrate all the stuff you think he should do or all the stuff you want him to do. You shut up and you let the player control his own character. If that player wants to have his character go up and take that amulet and then try to sell that amulet on the black market, or use that amulet in a dark ritual to try to raise some undead, or take that amulet and decides to take it to like a holy temple where it can be destroyed in some kind of like celestial fire that'll purify and destroy evil relics and artifacts. It doesn't matter what the player wants to do with it. Maybe he just wants to keep it and he wants it to be his little precious, okay? It doesn't matter. It's none of your business. It's none of your business to try to dictate how that player should control his character, what that character should do. It's not your place. It's not your lane. Stay out of it. Let that player have his freedom. Let him play his character any way he wants. And then you just bring the consequences that come through the logical game world, the fiction of the game world of what would happen, okay? And yes, sometimes that means that the player character then dies. Yeah, maybe he takes that amulet and because of its magical powers that it is going to kill him in like 24 hours if he touches it, if he picks it up, because he wasn't the one who the artifact belonged to. Cool. He picks it up. And then 24 hours later, he falls down dead. He just dies, guys. And you know what happens when the mystery is solved of like, yeah, that amulet, it kills anyone who touches it in 24 hours. When that comes out naturally in the game world, you don't say that to the players. The game master doesn't say, well, yeah, because actually that amulet has a curse on it. No, you don't do that. You don't talk across the table at the players. No, you have someone in the game world be able to deliver that information, or you have that information available where a character can learn that in the fiction, in the game world, that is what happened. And then boom, you've created this little mystery of the characters trying to figure out why their friend died, who killed him, what happened. And so you have all this mystery, you have all this intrigue. All of that is stripped away and removed. It's all blinked out of existence. The possibility of it even happening if you try to dictate that the player could just not touch the amulet. In many games that I have played, I have been upset to the point where I didn't enjoy the game session. When I have sat at a table and game masters have tried to overly narrate my character for me when it's not what I would actually do with my character, or when I've been put in a situation where I should be able to do something, but the game master has decided that he didn't want me having the ability to do it. So another example, maybe there's a relic that I'm trying to get and I fought my way through the dungeon. I see it on the other side of the room. So me as the player controlling a character, I say, all right, I'm running across the room as fast as I can. I'm just going to grab that relic. And before I can get to it, the game master says, well, actually it vanishes. It just disappears. And you know why it disappeared? Because the game master just didn't want me to have it, okay? Don't do this. Don't do this nonsense. If you have made it clear that the artifact is in this room at the bottom of this dungeon and the players have fought their way through all your nonsense to get to it, let them have their treasure. Let them have victory. Sometimes they're able to bypass big challenges in the game that you thought should have taken all night, but they're able to achieve success in 15 to 20 minutes. and you think, man, I was robbed, or man, this feels cheap. It doesn't. It doesn't. When players at the table get to solve the mystery quickly, or they get to beat or somehow like do a workaround through creativity, through ingenuity in the game, if they are able to achieve the mission and not have to fight their way through the bad guys, or they're able to bypass the trap that you thought was so clever, that is like a high five, awesome, everyone having a great time at the table experience. Don't rob that from your game. Don't rob that from the players. Let them have their victories. Stop trying to strip away their agency because you think a different conclusion would be better off. All right, if the characters that they're playing come up with a creative, very ingenious idea that makes sense in the game world using game world logic to solve the problem, and they're able to do it quicker and faster and in a different way that you could have ever foresaw, more power to them. Let them have the victory and then move on. You can get into something else. There's another situation that's going to come up because this is a game of fiction where there's always something coming up. Just whatever additional cool ideas you wanted to throw at them that maybe they bypassed, you can find ways to incorporate that in a different game session. You do not need to try to block them or keep them from succeeding when they've earned it. Anyway, guys, that's what I think about this. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below.